Call to order the Board of Supervisors meeting for February 18th at 7 p.m. If you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Amy, roll call to establish a quorum, please.
Supervisor Jim Nellen.
Here.
Chairman Dan Wolfel.
Here.
Supervisor Linda Waite. Here. Supervisor John Stavenus.
Here.
And Supervisor Tony Hayne is excused.
All right. Before we go to the meet and greet tonight, I'd like to just address a couple things. If you notice, the last couple of months, we've been missing Supervisor Tony Hayne. Tony, if you watched any of our meetings, you know he has been on oxygen for the last almost 2 years and was on the transplant list. And I think 2 weeks ago, he was taken to UW-Madison, where he received a lung transplant. He's doing great. He was released from the hospital today and transported to St. Vincent's in Green Bay, where he'll spend a couple weeks in rehab, and then he'll be back here at his desk. So just thought I'd let you all know his health is, he's in good spirits and doing very well. And the other item is that this past Saturday, we celebrated the Leo Zipper. He had been the town chairman for 20 years here prior to myself, and had been a huge influence in what we did here at the town. For example, the creation of this and building of this new town hall. So today, as it turned out, would have been Leo's 78th birthday. So keep him in your thoughts, and he certainly will be in ours, okay? So with that, let's just do the quick meet and greet, and then we'll go on to the meeting. Linda, excuse me. Amy, wrong person. All right.
Amy Flock, Clerk Treasurer, County Road P.
Jim Nellen, Lori Lane, Town Supervisor.
Dan Wolfel, Town Chairman, Bark Road.
Supervisor Linda White, Bluff Court.
John Stavenus, Supervisor, Whitefish Bay Road.
Go ahead. Dan, you would? Well, you can just wing it. It's okay.
Dan Kane, Door County Emergency Management Director.
Thank you.
John Adele, Whitefish Bay Road.
Tony Depies, I'm with Ayres and Associates.
Tim Newman, Fire Chief.
Great.
Larry Chapman, Good Drive.
All right. The group gets smaller and larger by the month. All right, public participation. I think I know why 3 of the people are here, so we'll put them on the agenda. John, you have anything?
Yeah, just, I know the town must control like the plowing and salting and stuff. There's a lot of side roads that really need to be addressed with some salt. They've been iced over for probably the better part of 3 weeks, and now everybody's got the same issue. But I know Nelson Lane for sure, Dunn Road is really bad. A couple spots over by Lane Court, we take care of a couple properties over there. And that's pretty rough over there also. I don't know if you guys, like I said, I don't know if you guys got minimums on plowing or salting or what the deal is, but maybe we should look into spending just a touch of money on some salt.
Well,
And I know everybody's got the same problem this year, so.
I've addressed that with the county on a couple different occasions. The biggest piece of the puzzle is cash. And we've gone from, in my tenure, from $40,000 to $110,000 for snow plowing and snow removal and salting. Basically, when we have 2 inches or more, they plow everything. They go out and sand and salt all of the necessary hills, curves, and places that are known to be a problem. We've expanded on a limited basis, some salting on specific roads that are high traffic. But frankly, at this point in time, I don't think we have enough funds to expand that. If someone has a concern, they're welcome to call the town, myself, or Amy, or any of the supervisors. And if there's an individual situation, we will have the county come out and take care of it, which we have done on an ongoing basis. But I don't anticipate this year, and there's another complication within that, which is the county does state roads first and they haul salt. And they do county roads and they haul salt. And when they go to town roads, not only ours, but other towns that they do, they switch to salt, they switch to sand and sometimes a sand-salt mix. So it only makes it more difficult for them without having them backtrack repeatedly to try and do that as well. So I've had that conversation with them. The best solution is if there is an issue, I know there are some because we get the calls, have somebody contact us and we'll have the county come out and take care of that individual road as needed. So, okay? All right, let's go back to the agenda then. Amy?
The agenda has been properly noticed.
It has. Then we would have a motion to adopt.
I would move to adopt the agenda as noticed.
And I second that motion.
Motion by Linda, second by Jim to adopt the notion, to adopt the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. Approval of minutes, Board of Supervisors meeting from January 15th and the special closed meeting that was held on February 11th. You should have been given an opportunity by our town clerk to take a peek at the minutes of both. And unless something's caught your eye, a motion to approve would be appropriate.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from January 21st, 2019,
You want to include the special closed meeting?
and the special closed meeting.
Okay.
Okay, January 15th, correct?
January 15th.
Oh, what's that?
I think you did say the first.
Yeah.
January
Okay.
50.
Second?
Okay.
I second that.
All right. Motion by John, second by Jim to approve the minutes of the Board Supervisors meeting from January 15th and the special closed meeting of February 11th. All those in favor signify
No.
yes.
The meeting was on January 21st.
Oh, all right. So we
I
have an
have it right over
amended.
here.
Let's start back
We'll
with an
amend it.
amended motion, John. You want to try that since the calendar here is long?
Motion was right.
Right.
I make a motion to approve the January 21st, 2019 minutes and the closed meeting on, I don't know when it was,
February 11th.
February 11th, okay.
All right. Jim, are you in agreement with that?
I am.
Okay, in which case.
Second.
And we have a second, a corrected, amended, and all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, first thing on our agenda is a presentation by Dan Kane, who is the new Door County Emergency Management Communications Director. Nice title. Fit on one card?
Yeah, it's long.
Wow. Obviously, he has a presentation for us. We'll turn off these overheads if that's okay with you, and make it a little better.
What? Which one?
Hit the ceiling one.
I'm kind of a watcher, so.
That's,
Is that better?
is that good?
How about the tray too?
Tray two?
Top of right.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Okay.
All right. Can you hear me okay? Okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you guys for having me. As you stated, Dan Kane, Emergency Management and Communications Director in Door County. Going to talk to you guys a little bit today about emergency management, and I just want to kind of quick show of hands, who's heard of emergency management, who knows what we do, knows anything about me or my department. One, I know you've seen.
A little bit.
Okay, so we got a little bit of, okay. This is meant, I will preface this, the presentation is meant for somebody who knows absolutely nothing about the department or what it does. So just bear with me if you already know some of these things. I'm just kind of trying to cover all the bases about emergency management. At the end, it kind of ties into what I'm really here for today, which is how it applies to the local level. You guys need to know, and I think why it's important for you guys. So that'll kind of wrap it up at the end. Okay, fantastic. So just did a quick slide about myself. 28 from Green Bay, married. Started my career in law enforcement. 2013. I've always equated it to being on the right highway, but not the right lane. So that's where I kind of moved into emergency management, found a home there. Was with Brown County for a little over a couple years, followed by Appleton in emergency management, and then moved into Door County in last May. Natural introvert, so if I don't talk to you, it's not that I don't like you, I'm probably just shy. So don't mind that. So anyway, that's a little bit about myself. Okay. Oop, too far. Wait. That's out of order. All right. We'll come back to that. Well, that's out of order. I think when it file transferred, it took them out of order a little bit. But so anyway, emergency management, this is what we're talking about today. This is over 200 years of emergency management history in one slide, but essentially, we got our start back in the 1950s. We were called the Civil Defense Agency back then. It was in response to this Cold War nuclear threat. And then in 1978, FEMA was created under the reorganization plan number 3. Basically what that did, and the thought back then was that they would take multiple different agencies scattered amongst the federal government that dealt with some sort of emergency work and bring them onto one house under emergency management. And that was where FEMA was created. 9/11 brought significant change. That's where we really grew our legs in emergency management. This brought about significant change in the emergency management world. There was a lot of criticism, if you read the 9/11 Commission report, about the response to that event and all the actions that went into that. Essentially, what it stated that better coordination could have helped prevent some of the things that happened. So there was a lot more that went into it. It's a pretty long document if you ever read it, but long story short, in 2002, following the attacks, then President Bush then created the Department of Homeland Security, which brought 22 agencies together under one roof, under the Department of Homeland Security, and that's where FEMA and emergency management sits today at the federal level. What we learned out of that was that preparation for emergencies needs to be an all hazards approach. It can't just simply be terrorism or a hurricane for the bigger cities on the coastals. It needs to be for every jurisdiction in every part of the country, and it needs to be for every type of emergency. So that's where this National Incident Management System, or NIMS, came from, out of the Homeland Presidential Security Directive 5. There will be a quiz later. And then, so kind of the overarching document, the guidance document that we used to follow to help prepare for those kind of things. Starts with preparedness. Nope, that's where we put our slide. So where are we at now? Grant funding is available for all 50 states in emergency management, and all 72 counties are required to have an emergency management department in Wisconsin. So, which are partially funded through 2 grants, EPCR and EMPG. They help supplement my position and offset some of the costs of my salary. We work out of these 4 main areas. I guess that doesn't work. There it is. Preparedness, response, recovery, mitigation are the 4 areas we work out of. Then you go to preparedness. So you might ask, what do you do when there's not an emergency going on? Well, we're in preparedness. That's kind of where we sit majority of the time. And like it says on the slide, this could be anything from planning, organizing, training, equipping, exercising, hitting, and taking corrective actions. There's a lot that goes into preparedness, which I'll talk about in a second. But that can involve a ton of things. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're asking people to be preppers. That just means that we're just looking for people to be better prepared and fill gaps that might be in plans or procedures, and for the public to know what they need to do to be prepared, because it really kind of starts with them and how we as the government can be prepared. So it's kind of a 2-pronged approach there. How can we enhance preparedness community-wide, not just in a governmental setting? This is how we determine what to prepare for. So this is a very basic graph showing we start at the upper right-hand side, the most severe and most likely to happen in your jurisdiction. It's called the Hazard Vulnerability Assessment. And you work your way back down to the bottom left-hand corner where you have the less likely and less impacted types of emergencies or disasters that would affect your county. This is meant to be small. It just kind of goes over everything that goes into those 2 grants that I mentioned earlier. It kind of goes over a list of all the day-to-day operations. Preparedness is kind of my day-to-day operation, and so this kind of goes over, and again, it's small, I understand that, but it just kind of shows you there's many different things that I'm doing in the preparedness phase when there's nothing else going on. You might think emergency management, by the name title alone, would have a lot to do with response. It really doesn't. Response is really that initial 5, 10 minutes, hour, 2 hours that you're trying to put the fire out, you're trying to stop the bleeding, if you will, and get things under control early. Emergency management can be involved at this point. It's usually fairly limited. It's important to note here, though, that our role is always in a support role, which I'll talk about in a second. But I'm not out there directing traffic or telling people what to do. It's a very supportive role, and that's how emergency management operates. So don't let the term emergency management make you think that I go out and I take over a scene and I run it for them. That's not how it works. So we'll talk about that in a second too. But a lot of people have the misnomer that they hear emergency management and think, oh, you're involved in the response heavily and you're out there managing and directing traffic and that. That's not the case. Where you see a lot of emergency management is in recovery. This is a big part of what we do. So this is everything after kind of the initial incident is stabilized. There's a lot of work that needs to be done on the back end. When everybody else goes home and everything clears out, there's still a lot of work that typically in disasters needs to be done. And that's where emergency management really can pull its weight. This could go into either short-term or long-term recovery. So examples of short-term recovery might be a multi-agency resource center. This is where you could bring multiple governmental agencies together for the public so that they can gather any sort of resources they might need after an event. Simple things such as getting the DMV involved so that they can, if they lost all their possessions, they can get a driver's license again and that kind of thing. For tornadoes and that kind of thing. So long-term recovery is going to be more permanent rebuilding, infrastructure rebuilding. That's a long process, especially with public assistance and FEMA dollars and everything that goes into that. So talk about that in a little bit, but just understand that's a lot of what emergency management does in recovery. Final step mitigation kind of speaks for itself. This could be anything from after the event, trying to identify what can we do to strengthen ourselves resilient to different types of disasters. So floodplain management, tornado shelters, community education, all these things roll into mitigation. How the process works. It's important here to determine the difference between an emergency and a disaster. They're two different things. An emergency, it happens every day. Car accident, house fire, cat in a tree, over in a reasonable amount of time. Okay, this is usually handled by first responders. They're able to do it on their own, by their individual agency. Not a lot of extra help is needed for those kind of things. As you move down the scale and you get up to a disaster, these are the things that are the far less frequent. These are the hurricanes, the tsunamis, the F5 tornadoes, things that are more community impacting. Might require coordination from many different agencies, including PD, fire, highway, non-governmental, IT, GIS, finance, you name it. There's many different people that could have their hand in the pot when it comes to an emergency, more than just police, fire, or EMS that you might normally think of. These are longer duration events. Policy decisions might need to be made at this point, the bigger this thing gets. So it's important to know that there is some gray area in the middle, though. Not everything is a small-scale emergency. Not everything is a big disaster. There's a gray area, and so the NIMS that we talked about earlier is what helps make this flexible. This entire model is flexible, scalable. Emergency management can fit itself anywhere kind of in between. Wherever it's requested is kind of where we fit. So, I mean, it could be something where Green Bay might have a bunch of extra resources, but maybe Sturgeon Bay doesn't have as many resources. So then the threshold then for Green Bay versus Sturgeon Bay might be a little different. Where Green Bay might have enough, Sturgeon Bay might be tapped. They might dig into emergency management sooner than maybe a Green Bay would, for example. So we can fit in really anywhere in the process. Just that's important to know that it's just scalable. It doesn't have to be an F5 tornado for us to get involved. We can really help out wherever we're needed. Alrighty. So, this got a little bit formatted weird. Apologize for that. So, the incident would occur. It starts at the local level, so the local response is going to be overwhelmed at this point. This is kind of the process of how it would work. So if the local response gets overwhelmed, that then can get sent up to the county level. Myself. Sorry, it's kind of...
I think it's a loose battery.
Okay, it's part of it, okay.
Yeah.
So the local response will get overwhelmed. It can come to me then in the county EOC. From the county EOC, it can go up to the state EOC, and from there it can go up to the federal or FEMA. That's where they're sitting. Emergency Operations Center, sorry, EOC stands for Emergency Operations Center, I should clarify that. That's kind of where management operations are done outside of the incident. So you could have all these multiple agencies that wouldn't necessarily need to be on the ground can coordinate themselves from a distance, and they don't need to be at the scene. So that's what an EOC is there for. So you might think, this is kind of where it gets to where you guys are going to want to pay attention. Why didn't the county hire you to be emergency management director? What do I care, right? So Wisconsin's a home rule state, and I think this is probably the key point of this slide that you want to take away, that no governmental agency at any level will have authority over your jurisdiction, over a scene in your jurisdiction. So that's myself, state or federal. Everything begins and ends at the most local level possible for emergencies. So you guys are on the hook from the beginning to end. We come in and support that effort, okay? Number 2, Wisconsin statute. This is kind of something I want you guys to think about as we go on past this point. The governing body of this is Wisconsin state statute now, 323, which deals with emergency management. It says that you need to, every city, village, and town shall develop and adopt an emergency management plan that is compatible with the state plan, and that's something that I can easily help you guys with, so I wouldn't get too wrapped up in that necessarily. The bigger part that I'd want to point out to you is that the governing body of each city, village, or town shall designate a head of emergency management services, okay? So it's important that a local representative or a local person for each jurisdiction have somebody designated as an emergency management person or director, if you will, for emergency services within their jurisdiction. So that's very important. And then as the county, I support the locals. And again, I mentioned this earlier, that we respond when requested by the local jurisdictions. And that the partnership between me and the local emergency manager would be key to that success going forward. So that's an important part of what I'm trying to get across today. I threw this in there because these are kind of the bigger topics that you see nationwide. Just that natural disasters and man-made emergencies are occurring more frequently over time. So they're certainly not going away, it appears, just looking at the data. They're increasing. And also I threw this in there as well. Mass shootings specifically. If you'll notice the graph, and it's maybe a little bit small for you, but essentially it's saying that over 60% or more of these are happening in Door County-sized municipalities. They're not happening in the bigger cities and that. So again, it's not meant to scare you. It's just meant to just kind of say, hey, listen, some of this stuff doesn't have boundaries, so it can happen anywhere. And I think that's an important thing to remember. And the last part about why I think it's important is that ineffective response and recovery we're finding nationwide in today's world are just becoming more unacceptable. The public is expecting us to know what we're doing and being able to help them, especially in times of emergencies or crisis. And so it's important that we understand and know what our role is in the whole process and how the process should work and to be successful. So, everyone today can criticize local efforts through the media, and they will do that if they feel that their needs haven't been met. So it's important to be on top of that. I threw this little 1-minute video in here. I just want to show it if I could. It really drives home my point about not getting stuck in the mindset that'll never happen here. Door County has been very blessed, I would say, looking back at history. We've been able to avoid the major disasters. We really have been fortunate in that way. But again, I wanted to stress that natural disasters, disease, cyber, terrorism, none of those do have borders. And I think this little clip will really, it just spoke to me a little bit in terms of bringing that home. This is a video of Hawaii, a volcano that happened, I believe, in 2015 or 16. And this is the news interviewing those folks right after it happened.
I could see this massive wall ahead of us, and it was squirting lava and rocks hundreds of feet in the air.
Right now, it looks like my house is cut off. So until those vents stop venting and they're able to clear the roads, we're not going to be able to get to it.
you know, that's the family home. My grandfather had taken his last breath. My son had taken his last breath there. That's the only house we all know, you know.
I never thought this would happen to me. I thought this was just people on TV and in the newspaper, you know. At one moment you're encouraged, maybe the house will survive and we can go back, and then the next minute you're like, oh, you know, it's not going to make it.
Yes, I knew I was building in an, on the East Rift Zone, but one thinks this happens over thousands of years. So it was a gamble with time.
Just to point out that this is a group of people next to an active volcano who never thought it would happen in their own backyard. It just kind of, I thought that was pretty powerful. People think it's just the person they see on TV. It's never, oh, sorry. Okay, I guess I'll have to flip through. Apologize. So, just that it only takes one event to cripple a community, and that it's not when, but if. I'm sorry, it is when, not if. And that it takes everyone working together to understand their role, and the important thing is not to be going rogue and going off on your own. This slide was a lot funnier last year when it was a little bit closer. People don't understand it as much now as I've gone through this presentation. But anyway, so that's all I got for you today. That slide got a little bit wonky as well. I apologize for that. But that's my contact information. I'm here to answer any questions you guys have about it. I may not know everything. Fairly, I don't want to say new, but I'm early on in my professional career in emergency management. So if I don't have the answer to a question, I can certainly find it for you. I'll know somebody who does, but I'd be happy to entertain any questions you guys have on it. Otherwise, I want to thank you guys for having me. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, Dan, right now, in our office, we have a very large 3-ring binder, our
Yep.
emergency management plan. So will we need to incorporate anything different into that plan, which does designate our contact information and all that? Will there be any changes to that binder or the plan as it stands right now?
Not having seen it, hard to say. I could certainly take a look at it and make any recommendations as to maybe aligning, making sure that it's aligned properly with the state plan and things.
And then also, I was going to mention Code Red under County Board report, but
Okay.
you know that much better than me, so.
Yeah, I could briefly touch on that. So the county, emergency management department for the county is pushing out our mass notification system called Code Red. It's an opt-in system. That's the important part to know there, is that it's an opt-in system. So people can sign up voluntarily through this system, put their information online. You go to Door County's homepage. It'll be on the left-hand side of the screen. It'll be a little Code Red icon. You click that, and you can sign up. Essentially what it does is it allows you to sign up for phone calls to a landline, cell phone, emails, text messaging, and it'll put out social media posts on our pages if you follow us on that. And it can hit all of those things with one click of the button, and it can hit thousands of people, whoever signed up essentially, with the click of a button. We're able to get out messages related to emergency work. Maybe it's something specific to your area we can geolocate. Maybe it's just couple square blocks that might need to be impacted, or maybe I can do an all-call for an area that might have a tornado warning in its area. Path might be looking like it's coming in there. Public health notifications, major events, road closures, really anything. And the possibilities are endless with it, but its main focus is to be used for mass emergency alerting. So we're really looking to just push the message out and try to get the word out about it, answer questions about it. If you guys have any questions about Code Red, I'd be happy to answer those. I also have outreach materials if you guys are interested in pushing it out to your community members. I could send those your way as well. But if there's something else you wanted to touch on, we could. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head of everything about it. But
Well, if there was weather,
Yep.
severe weather, accident, I can think of perhaps bridge closings or something
Yeah.
like that. That would all be on code red, and you would send it to your phone or email.
Yeah, weather is the one that it's optional to sign up for every single alert through weather, through code red. The county doesn't have that access right now, so anything weather related, just to point out, it'd be something more significant. It wouldn't be every rainstorm or every thunderstorm. It would be something more significant that would be pushed out through that. There's also a code red app. It's important to distinguish between the code red app, which everybody does nowadays, and signing up for the code red system itself. The app will allow you to receive alerts outside of your jurisdiction. So this is big for those people that come in and visit our areas that maybe don't necessarily live here year-round, or they just are dropping by. People that sign up for the app can receive alerts outside of their home jurisdiction that in another community where they would have code red. So let's say you drive down to Tennessee and they've got an area that has code red, and you have the app, you'll get alerts in Tennessee for the area you're in. So, but it's the same system, but it's a separate sign up for the two. Just want to distinguish that. A lot of people say, well, if I've got the app, I'm covered for Door County. No, you need to still sign up through the website, on Door County's website, and you can sign up through that. Again, it's all voluntary. We're just looking to push those numbers up, and especially with all the big events and stuff, it'd be good to get the messaging out. If road detours and that kind of thing are important, anything you want to get out, we can do general messages or emergency alerts. So really looking to just utilize that to the fullest and get as many people signed up as possible.
I have a question if no one else does. I'll give you shots first. I'll consume the rest of his time.
Go ahead.
Are you familiar with Glidden Drive? Have you been out to that area?
Not off the top of my head.
It's a 5-mile stretch of road running along the lake shore on the east side. I think there's 350 homes on that 4.5-mile stretch. And on the west side of Glidden Drive is close to 1,000 acres of woods.
Okay.
I know it's pretty close. It might even be bigger than that. I've asked the question of the fire chiefs in the past, and when you talk about preparedness, this might be an area where you could bring something to the party. If there was a fire on Glidden, there is, in the woods in there is no access. And I don't know, and I think I remember asking Tim Herlash, Tim Detman's predecessor as well. There was nothing that they felt that they could do to control a fire that had limited access. Now, I don't know if in the area of preparedness, if there's something in a game plan you might be able to format. God help us that we have a fire back there, but we have a constant problem with fireworks. And in that area, that's one of the premier areas where we have a large area of VRBOs, Airbnbs, rentals, etc. And when you're on vacation, you know the rule book does not apply. So we have fireworks as a constant concern. So anyway, I just bring it to your attention because I'd love to see, and I don't know what that might be, something that could say, if this ever were to happen, here's the resource that we could bring to bear that would understand the scope of this problem. Yep. Because I don't think anybody would want to be around if that thing really decided to go up.
Yeah, yeah. And that, to touch on kind of that slide, if you remember back to the slide that I had with the hazard vulnerability, most likely and most severe. For Sevastopol, if you guys did a hazard vulnerability, that would probably be up in that upper right-hand corner, right? That's something you'd be wanting to really focus on. So, I mean, that's something that obviously you identified that already as an issue, so that's good. Then what we do, we take it to the next level and we say, okay, let's run a drill on it, let's run a scenario on it, and see how it plays out. Let's put a fire out there, simulate.
Simulate.
See, I don't think we want to have a real fire.
Yeah. I don't know if
Tim, did we want to have a real fire?
Tim?
No. Okay.
No budget for that yet? Okay.
Tim will issue a permit.
So we can simulate, let's put a fire out there and just run it and just see how it runs. And that's kind of where we do, is where I get to be a little bit of a mad scientist in a way. In my office is putting together scenarios that, okay, how does this fit with this, and where are the gaps? My idea is to take an emergency plan and find the holes in it. It's really what we do in emergency management and on the preparedness side, if you will.
And I mean, when you look at our town, we encompass Whitefish Bay Dunes State Park and a large area of Clark Lake where we have large dense tracts of woods. Some obviously a lot more accessible than Glidden. But that would be great. I mean, be happy to put some effort into that because I think it's a concern of a lot of residents.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, so if you know, over the next couple months or weeks or however, meetings and that, I'd just ask you to consider thinking about an emergency management director for municipality. Technically, it falls on the highest elected official or their designee, so it starts with you.
I can designate.
And you can designate if you
You're my
wish.
kind of guy. Okay.
But anyway, just wanted to make you aware that's there, and that, you know, once that's done, then I can start working with, now there's 19 or 20 local municipalities in Door County. Then kind of phase 2 from this is to start, okay, where's everybody at, you know, knowledge-wise on emergency management? Let's get a little bit of training involved. It's not a lot, it's not labor-intensive or anything, but just kind of get everybody up to speed on what their role is in emergency situations as the director, and how I get a little bit deeper into some of this stuff, just to get you a little bit more knowledge on the subject. And then we start working together, doing exercises, training, planning, that kind of thing. So,
Yeah, and I'd like a copy of your presentation. Feel free to send it to Amy if you would.
Can do.
We'll distribute that.
Yep,
So,
yep, yep.
Linda?
That's an excellent point on Glidden Drive, because if you look at our map, Dan,
Yep.
there's only access
North and south.
on the north and the south. I mean, there's nothing, if there was a fire in the middle of Glidden Drive, there's no way, you know, if it was blocked off. So maybe fire lanes or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, and I would think that's going to be, again,
Helicopter.
Bulldozer.
Well, I mean, the issue, I think, really comes down to is if there ever was a fire, I mean, I know the fire department would do everything they could, but there's limited accessibility. So then you have to say, where do we go next? I mean, is it as simple as you need to round up some bulldozers to get into some areas and, you know, whatever, so.
this might be a good push for Code Red. You know, if you get in that community back there and you really push Code Red and say, you know, this is why you could use it. We've identified this as an area of issue, and
Right.
and if you sign up, we can alert you. Maybe you can. Community outreach, I think, is going to be huge for that project to make sure that everybody
know,
there
there's-
understands what the process would be.
There's a huge resistance too when they have concerns. I mean, you'll get calls, and I think John's probably had some, I know I've had plenty of them, where someone's shooting fireworks and they, you know, they're reticent to call the fire department or the sheriff's department. You know, they don't want to create problems. So
Sure,
sometimes
sure.
if you could educate them, if we can educate them to just say, hey, pick up that phone and it's anonymous, whatever, and do
Yeah.
it, you know, because you don't want to have the next step happen rather than, you know, try and get hold of me or someone else. So
Right.
I'll be happy to circle back with you on that as soon as I designate someone.
Well, not only access to the fire, but evacuation route, right?
Right.
Yeah.
To
Yep.
get out of the area.
Yep. So that's easily something we can put in a plan and run it through and see how it works.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Great. Anything else from anyone?
Any other questions? Otherwise, I'd be happy to come back and expound on something if you guys have any more questions, but otherwise,
Okay.
Thank you.
thanks for having me,
Thank you.
guys.
Great, thank you much. Appreciate it. And you're not obligated to stay, you know, you can, you don't have to. A lot of people come in late to our meetings. All right.
Is Tony gonna use it?
Sure, go ahead.
Can we take a look at that mic? I mean, that's very annoying to hear that clicking. I felt
I
bad
think-
for you, Dan.
I think we have a loose
You know, or
battery
use
that's
the
in
one
there.
up there,
Oh, there
or
you go.
skip the hand mic and just depend on that one?
Well, that's not tied into the PA system, that's only tied into the camera.
I mean, I'm sure that's showing up on the cable channel, that clicking and,
It's showing up, there's a feed mic, I have no picture.
well, we never had a problem before. We had a problem on Saturday and now we're having it again tonight.
That's a second.
We're short of
Yeah.
batteries for the other ones, so I can't talk.
Maybe we should just skip the
What
microphone.
size batteries do you need?
9 volt.
Maybe we should just turn it off or something.
If you don't.
Very annoying.
So bad.
Okay.
Don't touch it? Okay.
Well, we'll try to work around it a little bit tonight. All right, next item on our agenda is to talk a little bit about paving, and more paving.
What is that one? If it isn't tied in.
Now, last month, due to some surgery, as you know, I wasn't able to attend the meeting, and in my absence, John brought the subject up of town roads assessment and our PASER ratings, and I had put together a one-page summary of where I thought the problem was and what some of the solutions might be. I also had included a copy of an article from Mark Peterson, who was with Ayres and Associates out of Eau Claire, or Eclair, whichever you prefer. And in conversation with him, I was able to get one of the people out of the Green Bay office to come and speak to us, because it's a trip, obviously, from Eau Claire to here. And it so happens that that individual, Tony Depies, who introduced himself earlier, was, I believe, the city engineer for the city of Sturgeon Bay before you retired, right, Tony?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Tony and I have had an opportunity to talk, at least to try and bring him up to speed on where my thinking was on this. And just as a couple side lights to the conversation, I think Linda mentioned at last month's meeting that Bay Lake Regional Planning, which we're a member of, also does this. We may have them come at a future date. It's my intention today to have Tony talk us through from an engineer's perspective why we should take a look at making a one-time investment in doing this. So Tony, I'm going to give it to you, and as we have questions or
Thanks,
whatever.
Tony.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Perfect.
Just to make sure that everyone has heard me, again, I'm Tony Depies. I'm with Ayres Associates. I'm a civil engineer, and before I started working with Ayres, I was the city engineer for Sturgeon Bay for almost 15 years. And that makes Door County and this whole area very near and dear to my heart. I want to make sure that it stays as a great place to visit and a great place to live. So the PACER program, originally set up by the state, gave communities, towns, counties, cities, an evaluation criteria for their roadways. Using that criteria, you could determine what type of repairs would keep that road in its best condition. So if you, I'm sure you've all seen the PACER book, because it sounds like you've done most of the ratings. Pretty much in there, you can say if a road is rated number 10, it's new. And that means within 12 to 24 months, it's not a 10 anymore, because it's no longer new. Typically, through one winter, it would drop down to a 9. A repair to a road will never bring it back to a 10. Only new roads are 10. So that's kind of a unique situation for that rating number. Roads that are overlaid, they certainly can be brought back to a 9. They gradually progress lower in your ranking as they get older and as you can identify different deficiencies. Roads will start to crack after a certain time. I can tell you they'll start about 80 feet apart if you look at your transverse cracks. It's just the way asphalt works. And a road that's ranked an 8 will have those types of cracks in it. Still nothing that you need to do with it. As they progress to get closer, they'll start to divide that in half, 40 feet, then 20-foot segments. Those are the ones you want to start crack filling. Typically, that'll drop your rating to a 6 so that you know, or a 7, so you know that's the type of repair that that road gets. As they continue to get worse, they will proceed to a chip seal, which is a cost-effective way of making the road last longer. As a community, you always have the option of not doing any of those steps, which means you let it get down to where it has to be replaced, and then you replace it. Unfortunately, that gets to be a very poor use of your money, because that road might go bad within 25 years, whereas if you do low-cost, intermittent repairs, you can make it last 40 years. So that's the goal of a rating system. Try and get you to be able to know when to do the inexpensive repairs that make that road last longer, so you can use your money more cost effectively. If you sometimes it's difficult to rate roads based on what you see, or based on when you know how much you have to spend. I want to identify certain roads that could be repaired or should be repaired, and you tend to overrate them. And I think in looking at the state's listing of, based on information that you must have provided to it in their Whistler program, it does look like some of the roads are rated pretty high for their age, without ever having looked at all of your roads. So I can see why it'd be nice to start with a good, clean slate and a base of having all your roads rated by somebody who would do the entire community with a professional understanding of not only where the road would rate in the Whistler system or the Pacer system, understanding how the repairs would be best made, understanding what the flaws are in the road. That might be poor soils. You can tell by the way the road is cracking up whether the soils are bad with a water problem, or you may just be able to tell how old the road is based on a different type of deterioration of pavement. You can tell that maybe the asphalt had some problems when it was put down, and it's coming apart in a separate way that we can understand the better way to repair those roads. And that's the expertise that someone like Ayres brings to the community. We not only can rate the roads, which I think you all are qualified to be able to do that, if you so choose, but we would be able to understand the repairs and how that fits into your rating system. As you're aware, we would rate it the same way that you probably do. Get out, you drive every road, break it up into segments of common pavement, and when the road goes from being in decent shape, it might have a stretch that's bad. We rate the segment for that and rate that segment separately. I have your Whistler system, everything that was turned into the state. You have a significant number of different segments. They seem to be legitimately identified. I would say that if that part of your program is accurate, we can very quickly and very easily update your actual ratings, much more cost effectively than Mark even identified. Mark's original proposal, which he had given to Dan, was based on our asset management system, and that goes above and beyond Pacer ratings.
Right.
We can set you up with something where we can review all of your street signs, tell you what the life is left on them, give you a program to keep those all within compliance. And the same thing can go for the streets, any curb and gutter you have, and that's really the cream of the crop asset management for a township. And that's what Mark is mostly involved in. We have another group through our Waukesha office who strictly get down to the Pacer program, which would be something that would be typical for townships because it's the system you'd use. I mean, I can sell you a whole bunch of computer information that you'll never know how to use, you never know how to look at, and it'll sit on the back shelf until it becomes obsolete. And that's not what anybody wants for either a township or a city. It's not good business for anyone to do that to the community. If you would like, we can get you a proposal that says we will rate your roads, we'll do it on a time basis. We charge you so much per mile for our travel time, so much per hour to complete the work, and we will cap it at a certain amount. We can do all that for you. Hopefully we get it done even quicker. If you want us to prepare a capital management plan, 5-year plan for using that work, you tell us what your budgets are, and we'll give you a good idea on how you can best usually.
And that's my objective. I want to have a capital plan come back. I want to have our roads segmented down. I want a recommendation that these 10 roads need seal coating or could be, and prioritize them in what order, rather than approaching this each year and depending on a lot of flexibility, we move back and forth. So that's basically what I envision, is that grounding, a recommendation, a plan that we can then put in place. This is the year that we've paid off this building. So we're going to have about $300,000, which is the first time in, I think, my tenure at least, that we'll have come close to that to be able to tackle some of this. We may be able to squeeze a couple more bucks out to try and take a bite out of these roads and start to make a difference. I view this, and I mentioned this to you, and I don't know whether I brought it up to the board or not, but in my mind, this can be an educational thing for us as well. After someone gets done and gives us a grounding, we could take the top 10 roads that we have gotten back that are rated and take a trip out and look at those roads and then do our own evaluation as to why did we rate it last year as an 8 and you're calling it a 5, and where do we see that today given this stuff? So I think it could be beneficial for us in the future, because I don't think we do this again and again, but we get ourselves grounded one time, make the investment to get it done right, and then build off of that. So that's my talk track, but feel free to ask questions and comments, so whomever.
Well, just a couple of comments, and then I want to get into it. I have a couple of questions I wanted to ask you. Tony, I think in addition to evaluating the roads, I think what we need is, it has to be, in a fashion that we can create a capital plan around it. I mean, just the raw numbers themselves won't get us to where we need to be, which is a plan over the next 5 or 7 years. What do we do in order to enhance and extend the life of those roads? Because my impression is based on what I understand, and I don't pretend to know a lot about this subject, is that there is you do have a curve. And if you let a road deteriorate to a certain point, it becomes all the more expensive, and at some point, you have to start over, which is enormously expensive. So if you can do something early in the process, that's cost you maybe $10,000 a mile, as opposed to rebuilding the road, which costs you $150,000 a mile, and you'd like to do that. We have approximately 240 road segments. I don't think we are necessarily wedded to those. And if you were to make a proposal to us, would you be in a position to identify what those segments might be? Because some of the segments are 75 feet and other segments are 5,100 feet. And I don't think that makes an awful lot of sense either, because I think, well, maybe it does, but we just don't know.
So much piecemeal over the years that
That's
we
right.
force those segments. That's part of the problem. Patching and 50, whatever, right? Yeah, I agree with you.
Yes. Again, it all depends upon how much time we spend at it. If your segments were correct, we could evaluate all of your roads, give you a PACER rating in 2 days' time. If we start doing and breaking down more segments, there's more paperwork to do, more data entry, more evaluation. That just means we spend a little more time at it. If you're pretty accurate, we go quickly, we'll be under budget. If we find that your segments aren't very accurate, we will be pushing to our budget.
So when you go, I don't mean to interrupt, when you go out there and undertake the evaluation, explain to me exactly what you're doing and what tools are you using to determine how to evaluate a road properly?
We will use, primarily, we will drive every segment. We will look at every segment and identify changes in the value, in the quality of the pavement.
And how do you record that?
That's where we would record our segment. We have electronic measuring devices we may use landmarks and go back with Google Earth and be able to identify segment lengths that way. In fact, if Google Earth were to come through and drive all your roads this year, we could do it on the computer. Right now, I can tell you they haven't been back since 2013. It wouldn't be a very good analysis of your road. But that's how good and how high quality some of their pictures are nowadays. So we might state it's based on our ability to measure it. We might be the first 1,000 feet of a road. Next segment might be like you had said, 5,000 feet the next stretch, because the road is consistent in that whole segment. That's the most important thing. And that's the way we would break apart your segments. There's also information that the state has, what the right-of-way width, the pavement width, and things like that. It's all been measured once upon a time. We would do a real quick check to that, make sure that it's fairly accurate, and then we wouldn't have to enter any new data for that. So the more accurate the existing information is, other than the grading itself, the less time we would spend. But yes, we will break it down based on different segments of the road. And because it's not, we need to know if it's 115 feet versus 112 feet type of accuracy. We can do it from a vehicle and measurements.
Linda?
It sounds like you are doing just a visual then, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
But again, we would use our engineering
Yep.
understanding of how that pavement ages to determine some of the causes for it. We may direct you that you have to look at drainage in an area that causes the road to deteriorate.
Okay, and Whistler is submitted biannually, so every 2 years, so we just submitted it in 2018. Do you have a list of references? And also from past experience, have you found that the ratings have been so off point that when the DOT sees a rating in 2019 of 8 and now in 2022 it sees a rating of 5, I mean, something's quite obvious that we were misrating our roads.
Yes, I mean, if it will jump out at us if your roads weren't accurately rated. It won't jump out to the state, because all they do is enter the numbers. And this is, their requirement is to get you to think. Then they let you do what you want for the information. So they will give you money based on certain needs. That's what the local road improvement program is, local road discretionary program for towns, where if there is a big road that really needs to be worked on, there's extra money available for you outside of that discretion of that program. When I was with Sturgeon Bay, I got a $500,000 to do 3 blocks of street, city, an approach to the bridge.
I'd like to drive it if it's still good.
Then,
Linda, are
do you have
cons-
any references? Some other towns or villages that you have done this service for?
I
That
certainly
you
can
could
get you
send to
those
Amy or something? And
out of our Waukesha office. It's a fairly new program. Like I said, we really got into the asset management, and it has dwindled, come back to this PACER program for different areas. And yes, I can get you references in places that we've done it before. I can give you my own personal reference, and that would be at Sturgeon Bay, where the program was set up.
thanks.
Because if
Were
we,
you- There's a question. Were you concerned, Linda, that if the state saw such a revisions, that there would be some blowback? Is that
Well-
where you were thinking?
The purpose of the Whistler program is to document that you're using your money and the ratings should be going up. So if you're using $200,000 a year, we should see an improvement on 2 miles of road or whatever. But if you're telling me that the DOT doesn't really care what the numbers are, they just want to make sure
that you're,
Then the
that you're doing it.
DOT, we're doing our
Yeah.
job, but the DOT is not if they're not paying attention.
They probably got bigger fish to fry.
Yes, I mean, you are responsible for your roads.
Right.
They are not. But what was seen in that program was, if you wish to get some of that money, you have to have these 5-year capital plans.
Okay.
I'm sorry, a further question. Tony, when I look at the rating system, I mentioned this the last time we met, is as you go from a 6 to a 5 to a 4, it seems that the standard is pretty qualitative as opposed to analytical. And you're telling me that's not the case. You're telling me that you believe your system is well honed enough that you can make you can defend why you grade a road a 6 as opposed to a 4?
I believe that we will get to the consistency, to where you will know that all of the roads rated a 6 are in a similar condition. Somebody might say, well, that would be a 5 in my book, because I'm more critical, and I look at a crack is not necessarily a crack in a road. We will look at it and say, some cracks are structural, some are more cosmetic, and we will be able to say consistently that we will look at those cracks as structural, as being effective of the rating system.
Thank you. In the materials you provided us, you note that you have 2 different programs. You've got a PCI versus PACER. What's the difference between the two, besides one being much more expensive than the other?
Yes. The PCI gets more involved in what type of road base you are, what kind of the soils in the area, and there's a lot more data that is entered with it. Is that good? Yes, if you're going to use it. Most townships aren't using that type of data, so that when we walk away from that system, it may not be maintained properly. So that's why, with the exception of communities that have very active engineering staff, that's not used very often.
Okay. Your algorithms for determining the magic sauce that allows you to make these fine assessments between rating a road a 5 versus a 3 versus a 7, is that something you can buy, or?
It's in your PACER book. If you have that old, any of the PACER manuals,
Yes.
it's in there.
We do.
Yes, and that's what strikes me as being pretty qualitative in some regards.
But when it comes right down to it, you could have 3 different engineers, and they could give you 3 different ratings.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
But the roads,
So if they're just doing a visual test, then it's still a ballpark figure.
It is, and it's how well you're able to use that. I can tell you that while I didn't do 100% of the ratings in Sturgeon Bay, there's a technician who I worked with who did most of it. I went through and I checked them. I thought his ratings were a little high. So I was manipulating the figures a little bit to say some of those 5s I treat like 4s. Some of those 6s were like.
But if he was the expert, why are you changing them?
The reason why he did all of them is he was consistent. I was then able to take those roads and see a little bit better how they compared with the PACER program. And that's pretty much what we would offer you. Consistent evaluation system, and then review by a second individual who would kind of narrow those down to make them more precise. Categories are there. They're pretty accurate, but we all have a tendency to want to not have to do the roads. And when I was a city engineer, I felt that pressure to say some things weren't so bad. I don't have the money to spend on them anyway. As a consultant, I guess I wouldn't feel that pressure.
Yeah, but we're not asking you to do that. We're asking you to rate the roads.
Yes, sir.
Then it goes to us to decide how to spend the money.
Absolutely, yes. But we could also give you the criteria, break down the stuff, and then you would fit them into your years and prioritize within each step. If you have a $300,000 budget, we can advise you how to break that $300,000 up to best keep your roads in a good condition. $300,000 may not be enough to see your general rating go higher. It may not be enough to maintain it where it's at. And you may see dips based on the fact that some of your really bad roads, you're gonna let go from a 4 to a 3 to a 2, depending upon how much traffic is on it. Or more traveled roads, you may have to repair when they're at a 3 and get at them a little bit earlier, just to be safe.
You know, John, I think that at the end of the day, which is what the chairman was saying, I think that the discretion we exercise is once having a comprehensive assessment of the roads, which has been done in a consistent fashion. I think then, knowing the community and understanding the manner in which the roads are used, we could then bring that assessment.
I like
sort
that
of lay
getting a
on top.
baseline to see how we have been rating over the years, which is a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, we have not done, we've eliminated, I shouldn't say eliminated, we've reduced chip seal to a large degree. We have, to my knowledge, I don't think in years we've done any crack filling.
No.
So from the conversations that I've had with Mark and Tony as well, is that they would bring back to us a way to break down our roads and say, you know, these need to be number 1 reconstruction or whatever, and then on down, and the next 5 need, you know, crack filling or chip seal or whatever. And even though some of our townspeople may not be in love with some of those calls, you'd have the independent results that says this is what we need to do as a town to handle the finances and to take care of the roadways and ensure that, you know, we're doing our job.
Right,
So-
so realistically, and some of that point of that is when they do the PACER rating, that lays out what we have to do. Like you said, if it was a 4, we're just
Right.
gonna let it go and then redo it in 5 years, you know? If it's an 8, you know, well, then we're gonna try and save it.
So when we
So,
look at that area over by where Huey lives, Sylvan
circle,
Circle or whatever, that road over there is, it's an alligator skin from one end to the other, but at the opposite side of the coin, there's 6 cars a week that travel on it. So I mean, I'm sorry, Huey, if you're listening, but you know what I'm saying. So
Right.
anyway, I place value in the opportunity for them to do that, and I've asked them here to try and
all right,
Make
I
it
agree. We
feel
need a
nice.
baseline to see how we're doing on the ratings, so.
Yeah.
And we can certainly provide you with that. And you can decide if you want us to continue on and keep going above and beyond.
Is it inappropriate, it's probably inappropriate to move, to make a motion, but I do think that, I recommend that we go forward and obtain a proposal, and so we can evaluate it and compare it perhaps to other proposals
Right.
that might be available.
I absolutely agree. That would be would be to ask Tony's company to give us back a proposal and the add-ons so that we get the whole picture, you know, where to go with it, what are our priorities, help us develop that plan, and that, so we can get our arms around it one time and move ahead. And yes, I'd encourage you to do that, and whatever information we can give you, we're happy to do so. And
We will have something for you for your next meeting.
good news or bad news, you'll have extra time because we
Yeah.
won't have a meeting till April. But we will take anything you get early because we can read, so it's not a problem. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
much, appreciate it. Okay. All right, under pending business, we have a bring back from last month, which is the change in the fire permits. And again, this was discussed at last month's meeting, and we've asked the fire chief to come back. It is our intention, and I think it's already on our website. We're ahead of ourselves by a little bit. That effective as of this meeting, and actually a little bit before, All fire permits will be issued by the City of Sturgeon Bay Fire Department, who is providing us our fire coverage. And I think it brings some very good positives with it, one of which is that the fire department's available 24/7 to respond to requests, whereas the rest of us are not necessarily available on that same schedule. And the fire chief has probably 5 or 6 guidelines maybe in terms of how you're going to utilize and work with the fire permits, and maybe just run through those if you would again, and then we'll pick that up.
Sure, thank you.
And we'll put this on our TV station. We already have it on the web, and have another idea for communicating the change.
So some of the guidelines that we had used when we were issuing burn permits in the city, just rolled right into what we're doing here. In the city, we've opted away from burn permits because of our compost site, and everybody in the city is available to bring it out there, so we issue very, very little unless it's some special case. But some of the things that we would put on the permit, and it may vary a little bit from what you had done. Burning would be between sunrise and sunset. We've run into way too many problems where people that start stoking the fire up at 9, 10 o'clock at night, and they burn all night, and they don't stay on the watch. The burn pile or whatever's being burned must be inspected and approved by our department. We talked a little bit about that at a previous meeting, that we're going to try to get Amy a copy of the email with the permit. In that permit will have a picture of what's being burned, which comes back to be very important, because we've all been told certain things, and we get there to find out it's nowhere near what they were intention were. We as a department only issued 1-day permits, so we never issue multi-day permits, 7-day permits, things like that. A long time ago, that was something that was considered, but the problem is what's there today is not going to be what's there tomorrow, and all of a sudden they're going to be burning. They get a permit for 7 days, and heaven only knows what ends up being burnt in that time frame. One thing that we've talked about within our department is we always issue the permits that day. Now, if come summer we know that it's going to be a beautiful day at 5:30 and John wants to get out and start burning some stuff, doesn't want to call us at 5 o'clock in the morning, although we're there, we'll get out the evening before, so we can inspect it, with the notion that the permit will be issued for that next day only. It'll have the sunrise and sunset, and it'll have a picture of what's being burnt. So we come out and inspect the pile, and John burns tomorrow, and all of a sudden he's got a dozen tires on it, and the neighbors complain, then there'll be citations. So, and then the one big thing that we've had a lot of concerns with that really kind of troubled us is the size of piles that are being burnt. The DNR really kind of pushes the size. We've always told people, it's okay if you've got a huge pile, but break them down into a small manageable pile. You never know when the wind's going to pick up, conditions change, feed into it. So some of the historic piles that have had permits in the town that have been extremely sizable, we would not permit for burn. So the ones that maybe every 6 months they're having a get together and limited access, and going right back to Dan, what you were talking about is Wood Drive. One that we've had just down the road from here, we have very, very limited access. And it scares the daylight out of us every time that there's a fire down there. So those are just some of the things that we look at. The time, sunrise and sunset, the size, 1-day permit, and then, the larger piles wouldn't be allowed. So that would be how we would be issuing permits.
Okay. I have one thing that I did touch back with you on, and I neglected to follow through on you. I did ask the city to reevaluate the compost pile use. As the board may recall, it was $25, and it went to $100. When you want to try and prevent forest fires, it would be beneficial if they'd bring that number back down, and I did not hear back from the city administrator. I don't know if you had a conversation with him on it.
I did, after you and I had talked, and that was a little while ago, I mentioned to him, he said he was going to get back to you. I do know the city has been in a position, the DNR allows our compost pile to be not to exceed certain size, and I don't know what that is. That's Parks and Rec. How much they're allowed to grind up annually. The city is at its threshold. It's probably because eliminated burn permits in the city, and everybody's hauling all their stuff there. So I believe that's, kind of where they were driving that, because we were far enough under our threshold, and they were accepting, townships and outside communities to bring in at a lower cost. But we were very close to our threshold, and from what I understand, this would be a better question for Mike Barker, actually, with DPW. It really puts the city into a completely different class once we get up to that, what the DNR's got us labeled at. So, and I think that's what their fear is, if we get above that, then.
So that falls under the jurisdiction of Mike in the parks area?
Yeah, Mike Barker is the.
I know Mike.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, DPW.
All right, I'll follow up with
Director.
him as well.
Yep.
I'm be relentless.
But I will be seeing Josh tomorrow morning, so I'll
Okay.
make sure that he reaches out to you.
Great, thank you.
I
Any other board?
know I write a lot of burning barrel permits. That's a whole nother thing.
Yep. So the burn barrels are covered under the county ordinance. So
Okay.
burn barrels are allowed, there's, the county regulates that. Now, we've had issues where we've had people call about complaining and nuisance smoke. Even though if you've got it in a burn barrel, then you've got your permit from the county or whoever is issuing that. The neighbors call in and say that the smoke's getting in my house, I can't have my windows open. We end up getting called, and the deputies will end up, and we will put those out. There's some regulations that go with those too, as far as having spark arresters, some screens on them. The barrels have to be intact and not, all rusted out. So we've had a few of those where we've gone on and had to make some recommendations to people before they burn again, which they can. They just have to get a new barrel or some new screens.
But we still are going to issue those permits.
Yeah,
right?
unless there's a
Every year.
change, we'll.
So the permits that we're issuing are considered
Strictly-
open burning. Open
Right.
burning means
Correct.
uncontained area, so that if it's not in a barrel or whatever, that's what we're issuing the permits for.
Like a big campfire.
So, great. Any other questions?
I don't think we need a motion because it's really just a change in practice. And as I
Policy,
understand
yeah.
it, and it's being provided under the current arrangement in place between the town and the city, so there's no additional cost.
Correct.
And
We
you
just
want-
wanted to make sure that this was all, we've received a few calls, Amy's directed a few people towards us. Just want to make sure that it was, either we're doing them or, how you
Right.
want to handle it.
And you want to say for the people that are on TV, for the number, not to call 911, call your
Yep,
non-emergency
yep,
number?
the non-emergency number for the Sturgeon Bay Fire Department is 746-2916. You can press 1 to talk to a non-duty fireman. If they don't answer, it'll allow you to leave a message, and you guys get back in, or we see that, we get those messages. So remember, we are running calls and inspections and a lot of things, but there's always somebody in and out of the station multiple times a day.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it. Appreciate your coming out tonight.
No problem.
All right. And we'll work with Laddie to get something on the TV station. And okay, great. Next item here is legislative agenda. The Door County, legislative days, not a legislative agenda. Although we could set their agenda, that'd be great.
Well, I can give you some information on that.
You have some?
I do have
You do?
some.
Oh,
Yeah.
please, feel free. Join in.
And it's actually Door/Kewanee
Right.
Legislative Days, so Kewanee County joins us. It is going to be April 3rd and 4th. I believe that is a Wednesday and a Thursday. 131 delegates went to Madison 2 years ago, and the processes were divided into various teams. So these teams would go off to the different legislators and lobby their cause. The topics were supposed to be decided today by the Economic Development Corp. Some of the topics that have been submitted are the school start dates, after Labor Day, just because of seasonal help. The resort area tax, broadband, J1 visa program. I think there were about 20 topics submitted, and they're going to narrow that down to maybe 3 or 5. And because we did sponsor, I believe, bronze sponsorship or whatever, we'll probably get a note that
We have
4 or
2?
5 delegates can go, or...
Oh, I
4 or
thought it
5
was-
can go, yeah.
And then, of course, county board supervisors are invited. I do plan to go, so.
Okay.
Anybody want to join me?
John or Jim, I'm not, I won't be here. I'll be voting. I'll be stuck in the voting booth all day.
Is that the day, that's the day after the
You don't have to
spring
mention
election?
that.
It's the day after.
You don't have to mention that,
It's the
okay?
day after the spring election, right, so.
Counts me
All
out.
right, so you're gonna double up.
I
You'll be
do
representing the
plan
town and
to
the
go.
county. All right, well, thank you. Somebody else desires to
Anybody
go?
else?
Maybe Tony,
Yeah.
in his new capacity.
Maybe.
If he's in Madison, he can just
Could
pop
be.
on over.
Okay, good, thank you, Linda. All right. Next item is a little bit about the newsletter and the growing list of things. As you know, we have some money to do another newsletter. You guys did a great job last time. As I was thinking about some of the things that potentially could end up in a newsletter and might be timely, fire permits, the change in fire permits, a reminder on the comprehensive plan, which is coming up again, or the meeting itself. I know that Jim has been wanting to do a cable TV survey, which I think this could be a great vehicle for us to utilize that as part of the process. And Dan from Emergency Management gave us another one called Code Red. I think we'd be doing a service to the community with those. And then maybe a little blurb on our former chairman. But those were just a few topics that popped into my head. There's obviously others, or maybe these aren't as important. I'm just throwing them out there to see what you think, and if you would like to try and tackle one of those at your leisure.
Did you have a time frame in mind?
Ideally,
Summer, when everybody's here?
yeah, that's what I was thinking. If we could do something early summer, I think Jim would like the information sooner than later. And I think we have enough money in there that if we need to, as it comes to, if we do decide to do the internet cable TV survey, if we need to, let's do postage or something.
Sure.
So we get the results back.
Yeah, well, we have $3,000 budgeted. I don't know if there's some way we could insert a postcard into there with a return.
Well, they're all
Maybe
tabbed.
perforation? Perforation on the.
Right.
Could do a
that they could
perforation
tear
or-
off or something, and,
Yeah. Or a full page tear out and have it, fold over and pre-address.
right.
Well, ideally, you're right, ideally, we'd like, and we're talking, I've been talking to Amy about whether or not people could then go onto our website and fill out the questionnaire.
You could do that too.
That would- might
You
save
could give an
some-
either or
Yeah,
option,
exactly.
and, your choice.
So Amy and I are gonna start reaching out to various committee chairs and asking for articles and things like that.
Yeah, if that works, I think that would be, there certainly seems to be some things that could be timely,
Yeah,
and you guys did a great job last time, so.
thank you.
Okay, great. Next item is authorization for payment for the March 2019 vouchers, bills, claims in lieu of our board meeting. So we would need a motion to do that.
Could I make one
Sure.
suggestion? We budgeted lobbying a contribution to the Town Advocacy Council through
Right.
Wisconsin Towns Association. So we did budget that for 2019, which would roughly total $672. They are on a calendar year as opposed to a fiscal year.
Right.
So if we plan to make that investment, it actually,
It's in June
January,
or-
January.
We've made it.
No,
Yeah, that's right.
WTA dues are in July, but town advocacy, the lobbying group.
Right.
Is a calendar year.
Okay.
So
Which is
as of
paid.
January 1st. So if we could have that check issued.
It's already
and-
issued.
Okay, and
Yep.
get in the loop to start
Prorated.
receiving updates and whatever. Okay.
Okay.
No.
Yep.
All
All
right.
right, then I would move to approve any vouchers, bills, or claims as needed for the approved for payment during March of 2019 in lieu of the board meeting.
Okay.
I'll second that.
All right, motion by Linda, seconded by John for the authorization of payment for vouchers, bills, and claims in lieu of a board meeting for the month of March. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Tony? No? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. All right, financial reports. You have before you the account balances which are extremely healthy due to the collection of taxes, so don't get overly anxious. We are not going to build $2,800,000 worth of roads, although it would certainly be fun. We'd get Tony certainly interested. You have the budget versus actual in there, as well as the transaction list by date. And I do have one question that I forgot to call on, Amy, which is the Wisconsin Department of Revenue underpayment for 2018 taxes. What is that?
Where are you looking? What category?
Paychecks. It was underneath a check issued on 1/18.
Oh, that was to balance out the tax, the W-2s. We were off by, it needed to balance out the W-2s.
So they charged us 89 as a penalty, or is that just a category?
Last year, it somehow got misallocated. Last year, we were above, so they issued us a check for that 89.72. Now this year, we were underneath that 89.72, so now we're flush at zero.
Okay, cool. I'm trying to think why they're trying to collect taxes out of us,
Yep.
government municipality. All right, and then the other one that I had too was, boy, we had some expensive flashlights. Those babies must be really good.
They are very good. They are very bright, and they will light up the world.
Okay, good to know.
That like the kind where on TV, the ad where they run over it with a big SUV or something?
We haven't tried that yet, but we'll work on that for the next meeting.
I'd like a report.
We'll get the fire chief to bring a truck out with full of water, and we'll run it over and see if it holds up. How's that?
All right. Amy, you have any comments to add here to this?
The checks for the February settlement will be mailed out tomorrow. The payment on the mortgage is due by April 1st. It is $105,000 with some additional interest. Shank was in the office today conducting the audit, and that report will be available at the annual meeting, which is April 16th. It's a Tuesday.
All right. And they've assured you that you will be here with us.
Correct.
Okay, great. All right. With that in mind, would someone like to make a motion to accept the financial reports for the month of January?
I'll make a motion to accept the financial reports for the month of January.
I'll second.
Motion by John, second by Linda for the financial reports January 2019. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, then we have the approval of vouchers, bills, and claims for January 22nd through February 18th. And I think everybody's signed those, so
Yes.
a motion would be in order to approve those, please.
All right, I will move to approve the vouchers, bills, and claims for the period January 22 through February 18, 2019, as submitted.
All right.
And I second that.
All right, Linda and Jim, first and a second to approve the vouchers, bills, and claims. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion carried. All right. Oral committee and commission reports. I know there is one person here that's chomping at the bit to give us an oral committee report, and perhaps there are two.
Tony.
Oh, Tony.
Tony.
All right, Tony. You're
All right.
acting in behalf of Tony right now.
Absolutely.
And this is for the park committee?
Yes, it's Park and Rec. So
Okay.
I've been in contact with the high school athletic department for the spring softball and baseball schedule. I've also contacted Jason from the Institute Cubs, and I have their schedule too. He's working with Jason Berry from the Sevastopol Babe Ruth team. He has also been in contact with the previous year's park employees, and he'll be talking with them in the next couple weeks. He's also been in contact with Rob Pullman from the Northern Door Legion team. Mark checked the Clark Lake Dam yesterday, and it was 8.9, flowing very well. I would like to say to everyone who has been in my corner pulling for me a great big thank you. I'm feeling great, better than I've felt in a long time.
Fantastic.
Great news. Thanks, Tony.
Wonderful.
And
Thank you, Tony.
That was wonderful.
Anyone else have any oral committee reports?
Just to dyed your hair.
Okay. All right. Well, it's good to hear from him in any regard, although his voice has gotten sweeter. All right. County Board report, District 14, Ms. Waite.
Okay, Door County Board of Supervisors, the next meeting is Tuesday, February 26th at 10 a.m. And I think we've already covered most of the items I wanted to mention, which was legislative days, Code Red. Let's see, the UW extension, as you know, or if you recall, that was merging with its Madison servers and all that, and reorganization. So we used to see that U and blue W, and now they have a new emblem that just has a W on it. So that's going to be the emblem now for University of Wisconsin.
My family crest.
Yes, of course. Oh, yes, and we also talked about school resource officers. So the city of Sturgeon Bay does have a more or less full-time officer on their campus. And so the Southern Door, Sevastopol, and Gibraltar has reached out to the Sheriff's Department. It would be on a cost share basis, so obviously this person would be over at the school 9 months out of the year. So nothing definite yet, but they have reached out to have somebody on school grounds while school is in session, all day, every day, maybe dealing not only with security and checking doors and things like that, but also with truancy or just having a presence in the school so that students are accustomed to seeing perhaps somebody in a uniform on the premises and maybe curtail some, or maybe ratting on their friends.
You said on a cost share basis? Who's sharing the cost?
The school and the county.
Okay.
And that person, when school is not in session, would also be available for regular patrol duty then through the Sheriff's Department. So just discussion for now. Wisconsin Towns Association, we have our Door County unit meeting on Thursday evening at the town of Brussels. Starts at 6 p.m. That will give everybody a chance to meet our new Door County Sheriff, Tammy Sterner. And we have a new jail lieutenant, that is Kyle Vaser. And it's actually, I'm glad to see, it was a promotion from within. Kyle was on a patrol deputy, so he has been, he is going to be our new jail lieutenant.
Great. Thank you, Linda.
You're welcome.
License and permits, a very short list, 2 buildings. Nothing much there. And the safe built construction. So you see, we had a burst of activity for a while, and now it looks like it's slowed up, which I think kind of mirrors some of the conversations on the building in the nation. Yes.
Even the Register of Deeds office has noticed a sharp decline in recording of documents.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know if there's a shortage of homes or everybody's just happy where they are, or
They're in the middle of building.
I don't know. But document recording is actually down.
Okay. Correspondence, not a lot. There's a little bit in here from the fire chief. We also have an update from on the wetland zoning maps, and this is just pretty much a change. I don't think it's a significant change. It's just a correction, as I understand it, from one category to the other. We received a $100 donation this year from the Nature Conservancy, which they have done in the past, thanking us for services for their land in our community. We also have a copy of the Door County Sheriff's Incident Report, and regretfully, Sevastopol still leads in the number of incidents
I think
in the
the
entire
school might
town.
play a role in that.
Could we maybe extract the school out?
The school might play a role in that, because obviously if there is something going on,
Yeah,
they're going to
that's,
get a call.
yeah, at any rate, that's there on file. So not much else. Announcements for the month, as we know, tomorrow will be the primary election for the town board supervisors. The polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. That will be followed by the spring election, which is April 2nd, same hours of voting, 7 to 8 p.m. The annual town meeting, which will be on Tuesday, April 16th at 6 p.m. And we look look forward to seeing everybody there and at the polls. And if there's anything for agenda items for next month, let me know and I will put that on.
I do have something.
You do?
Yes.
What would that be?
I received a call, and I know we briefly talked about this maybe last fall, about ATV or UTV trails, a designation of any town roads.
Right.
So I told this gentleman that, our annual meeting would be a great time for, to discuss that, or if our chairman would want to put it on a future meeting. And then also, I think we had a perfect example tonight of our non-functioning microphone, and the visual was not that great on the screen.
Well, tough angle for us.
So, well, tough angle, but okay, so now the screen is over there, it was hard for us to see, and just like I said last month, we need to do something with our audio visual here in the town hall.
I think I'm not sure any kind of a screen is going to serve the purpose we want, because it's difficult for people to see it. It would be much more helpful if someone was going to give us go through slides, provide us the slides ahead of time.
A handout would have been great.
Handout, or we can even put them on the internet, or, make them available for downloading, so people, if they want to, they can go through the materials. It's very difficult for someone to talk and also for you to pay attention to what's on the screen, because you tend to get lost either way. And besides the fact you can't see the screen. I share your concern, Linda. I just think that I think there may be another technology fix that we ought to seriously look at.
I'm sure there is, but we have presentations here, and not everybody has a laptop that they can look at the packet. Saturday was another example. We had people speaking, and the microphone was clicking and whatever, and they would have liked to, they had a laptop along where they would have liked to show some pictures in that. We just don't have that capability, and we have this great, fantastic building, but it seems under-equipped, so.
Well, we did have that on our capital plan, so it's nothing new. And Laddie has sent me, as I've inquired of him, I've had comments from people who have watched us, both in terms of audio, not being able to hear as well, and also not seeing. There have been comments like, gee, it would be great to see the person speaking and the board at the same time, not panning back and forth, which would require that everybody use the podium. That's good news, bad news. But we can come back around and look at what we can do from AV, and to the point I mentioned with Laddie, there's a conference on AV, et cetera, sometime in May, right?
May 20th.
May
Yes,
20th.
in Green Bay, it's free.
Right.
We can all go to that.
And, maybe that's an opportunity for us to see what technologies are out there, because whatever it is going to cost us some dollars, and you want it to be a fix, not not an interim Band-Aid, so.
Well, that projector is 10 years old.
Yeah.
And it was, I think,
I mean,
less
the
than
projector-
$400. I mean, it's time that we upgrade.
I think you'd be amazed at what's available for, I think, affordable price. We could find out in the May convention.
The problem is always the same. Do we get salt for John's issues? Do we get a TV set for the audience? What do we, there's a limited amount of funds, but we can look into it. I don't disagree. All right, with that in mind, I think John's favorite part of the meeting is about to come about.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion by John. No second?
I'll second.
Oh, congrats. Second by Jim, that we adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.